Hey, excuse me for a second. Can I get y'all in the room because like everybody in here look like they're gonna make it but us. You know, flat out. Like, you know, so like, can I get y'all in the room? Because what I need to speak to is being able to pick yourself up off the ground when you don't have cues. And sometimes it wasn't like I had those cues. So like everybody in here say they got through college this way and that way. I got through college via San Quentin prison, a murder beef and a drive-by. So like I need to give you some different cues so you can pick yourself up off the ground. And I didn't take my Vicodins this morning. I got up early and I got a sciatic nerve problem. And I done waited this long. And I came basically to speak to the organizers in a real profound way, because some of this stuff could lead you to miss things that are important. And I know at a certain point, I'm laying in a hole in the San Quentin prison and came to the conclusion that I was the change that I was waiting for, because there was no other change there to look at. So when I was sucking tear gas, going from the 6th grade through college, I was the change that made a difference. So at a certain point, the voice that I speak to you in now, you're not gonna hear that often. You ain't gonna hear another brother step in front of a room and tell you, I was convicted of first-degree murder. I'm the first black person in convicted murder that ever headed up a public interest law office, and that happened this year. So like when I speak to you in this voice, it's not traveling a short distance, it's traveling an extremely long distance. And some of the stuff that I get to do now don't come from having cues or example, because the places that I've been to and where I have arrived at, I'm the only one. There is no other people like me. I'm the only one. So when I looked at who's gonna give me my mentorship, it ain't there. I don't find no other formerly incarcerated people that was raised in East Palo Alto that actually have attorneys and actually have a law office. I don't see that. And so far I was able to do that with limited amount of education, and I'd have built $2 million corporations. So at a certain point, I didn't come down here to speak to those people who were gonna make it. I came down here to speak to those people that was in doubt of making it, because the cues as you get older as a black person get fewer and fewer. They get more limited. You'll see more failures than successes. And how do you stay the course? You know, so my part of it is that I'm a civil rights and a human rights activist. That's what I was raised to do in a prison cell. You know, so if you see me start limping, it's only because like I'm supposed to be in bed and not speaking at all right now. You know, so the important part of this message is sometimes you ain't gonna get the cues. And I wish I could tell you that it was just a bad educational system and you was gonna prevail. That's not what I'm seeing coming out of East Palo Alto and around you. I see rampant discrimination, I see children failing, and I wish I could say that we was gonna prevail. It's doubtful in many instances that people do prevail. So like if you got a chance to work in this space right here and put this on, I need to thank you for doing that, because there's some other kids that probably don't get this opportunity. And if I don't speak to you, then who save us? You know, who save us? And that's a real significant thing. So I like to invite everybody in the room to come to my neighborhood. On 11th of December, me and my homeboys who all been to the penitentiary, we're gonna gather up in a park and we're gonna give away a couple hundred bicycles to kids. But you probably not hear about it on the news, because people invest more money in my failure than my success. So you won't see me often. You will not see me often. My failure means that prison guards get paid. My failure means that police departments get built. My failure means that the probation department gets money. My failure means that the parole division get money. My success only means that me and my homeboys sometimes can eat. It don't mean the same thing, you know? So I was one of the lucky ones that got a chance to go to school, got a chance to acquire an education. Most of my homeboys lose that chance before they even leave elementary school. So if you think that we having a competitive and a equal school system, that's not what I experienced coming up in the shadows of Stanford. What I experienced coming up in the shadow of Stanford is that I'm one of the have-nots. I'm not one of the people that had a whole bunch. So like when I actually jump over the fence and get mine, it meant that I had to jump over a whole bunch of fences to get mine, not just one fence. So like, I came here expecting not to see that many black people, so I brought one with me, my granddaughter.
Right.
You know, so I got to ride with my own crew. You know, and if I want her to value education, I got to show her an education. So like, I'm real grateful that somebody invited me. And I can actually tell you at this particular point, with a limited amount of education, sucking a whole bunch of tear gas, that some of the things that I do relate to national politics at this point. So some of y'all done seen that question that y'all think y'all don't got the answer and it only affects me. And that question is, have you been convicted of a felony on your job application? Probably within the last 2 years, we didn't actually change that question and removed it off our application. So not just a few of us can get jobs, but thousands of us can get jobs. So we removed that question off the application for the state of California, for the state of Minnesota, for the state of Connecticut. We 6 states deep in moving that in 30 cities and counties wide in terms of the country. So we're moving public policy in terms of civil rights work. Some parts of that invisible part of the conversation that you don't talk about is probably a real, you know, Let me ask you a question, because I need y'all to complicate some things before I leave. I need to know, am I an American if the dream is not open to me, if my voting rights is being trampled on, if I can't get housing, I can't get an equal access to a job, am I still a part of your country? And if I'm not a part of your country, what country would you prefer me to join? Since I'm going to be living with you anyway. So if you're not inviting me in, we need to come up with a plan of what to do about Dorsey and what to do about Dorsey's offsprings. Because I need to say, about time that I was 43, 44, I was already working on becoming a great-grandfather. So what we need to do about generations of Dorseys? You know, other questions that I just need you to contemplate. How many of us have been through the system that are being denied access to almost everything? Do you have a reasonable count? I mean, we talked about all the knowledge and all the schools and all the untraditional ways of learning. Do you know how many of me exist in your society? I'm not talking about, you know, you count us when it counts for you. So like, it counts when it makes money. So when we on parole, probation, or in prison, it counts. Do we count when we're not in that status? And how many of us is outside of parole, probation, in prison, or in jail that have been through this process that don't have equal access? My job is to get equal access to formerly incarcerated people and to get equality. So when I ask people to step into the room, I want to talk to the people who probably look like me, probably going to run into the same set of challenges that I ran into, and could trip and fall because, like I said, the cues get fewer as a black person the older you get. I seen a whole bunch of cues when I was coming through earlier, you know, because I had my examples. I had my Willie Mays. Should have been more cues than that. Willie Mays didn't teach me how to run a corporation. Willie Mays didn't teach me how to do grant writing. Willie Mays didn't teach me how to employ people. There should have been other examples available to me. So when I talk about the limited nature of the cues, I'm asking you to watch that stuff because it could get to a space where you won't have them and you got to make your own cues and pick your own self up because you won't have the example readily accessible.
Does it have to be a black person though?
It would be helpful. It would be helpful. And when you said, does it have to be a black person? I'm saying that to the most part, some of the stuff that I went through was flat out as a result of inequality, and it was based on race. You know, and you could see criminalization based on race in many ways. You know, so like my teaching tells me when I'm looking in Arizona and seeing that, I'm seeing the criminalization of race. It may look like immigration issues to other people. It could look like criminalization of race. And the way that it reflected in the black population could have been through the criminal justice system. Could have been another criminalization of race. And we had this conversation probably a lot, but we don't necessarily, we look at it, and I guess it's so ugly, we look away soon we look at it. So you had racial profiling that probably came out of here, probably came through somebody like Michelle Alexander. She was doing it for the ACLU. That was her following that particular work. And you said, do they have to be black?
Human experience, too.
No, I don't necessarily think it's the same human experience. So like when I identify myself as a formerly incarcerated person, I'm the person that will stay at home on this particular issue. You know, because like you can get people that will not open the door on me because I got a felony. And they'll think like we can prevail, and you can go to a place like East Palo Alto, you have a significant number of people who have this type of exposure that may not be given access to a whole bunch of stuff. So you can actually develop an ugly underbelly based on some of this other stuff. And when you say, do you necessarily got to be black?
I'm so glad you're saying that. For you to ask. No, but that's because this message can convey to a lot of people.
I know the message can convey to a lot of people, but the message that I'm trying to convey particularly to people of color. Because I think that is at a certain point, if we don't actually learn this stuff, because at a certain point, the circles that I'm traveling in, when I generally sit down at the table, there aren't any blacks. There'd be like one or two of us in the room. It's more than that in the country. It's one or two. And when I travel in the room as a formerly incarcerated person and I sit down at the table, it's generally only me. So when you're asking that question, where do you get your cues from when nobody else is in the room? How do you build that strength up when nobody is else there to feed you? You know, so like when I'm inviting people to East Menlo Park and saying, come on, help me get some bikes to kids. And I'm only inviting you there so you can see that you could have a whole community that you don't recognize yet. Because at a certain point, you didn't recognize that it was a certain thing called the gay community. And they lived among us all the time, and they were a community. You may not recognize me as being a community, and it could be a whole host of people with felony convictions, been to prison, that's living among people that could be a community owned to themselves. You know, and every once in a while you get a chance to hear some perverted rap music that you think is about us that ain't about us. Misogynistic, all the rest of it, and it'll sell. But we ain't the one selling it. And half the time, we ain't the one buying it. So some parts of this conversation is a conversation that I would have had with black people if I would have met you on the corner of East Palo Alto. I would have had that conversation with you if I'd have ran into you in Stanford. And the same thing I just did, I would have did that way no matter where we would have met, because I would have said, are you going to help us save our community and save ourselves? Because you could be the lucky ones that get a chance to actually make it. Because I'm standing up here already old, getting ready for some oatmeal. I could already be through. And I'm telling you, even if I'm through, you still got a job to do, because you got a whole community of people that need you to acquire the education. So you can go that untraditional route if you want to. But if you're going to compete, I actually ask you to think about how do you compete effectively. And I can't necessarily say because you organize an event and stand in the hallway, you get everything that you got coming. You need to be fed too. The person who needs the most out of this deal is probably us. You know, so I don't want to walk into a conference and see that the only thing that we can do is work there. I want us to enjoy the conference. I believe Malcolm said something like, you know, if he goes to a table and he's not eating, is he a diner? If you're not in the room and all you're doing is working, is it your conference actually? Are you benefiting from it to the same degree? So like if anybody haven't delivered a message today, I can tell you I'm from a community of formerly incarcerated people, and there's millions of us in your country. And you may not even know it's millions of us in your country. And we can't say it's our country because we still don't have the right to vote in many instances. We don't have the right to housing in many instances, and we don't have the right to employment in many instances. And if we don't have all of those things, how successful do you think all the rest of us is going to be? Because like even in the most of my success, I still got to take care of my kids who may be subject to go to San Quentin faster than they can get to Stanford. My name is Dorsey, and I came to tell you what's real. And if I stepped on any toes, I'm sorry I stepped on any toes.
What made the difference for you? What changed you, would you say? What was that turning point?
Probably learning how to read. But it should have happened before I got to prison. It should have happened. You know, I read about Aristotle when I was in prison. I read about Socrates while I was in prison. I read about Marx, Lenin, Stalin, Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong when I was in prison. That should have happened when I was on the streets. It shouldn't have happened when I was in prison. The other thing that made a difference, y'all asked me a question. I love flowers too. I believe that was on y'all thing. What do you like? I like flowers. I sent you a picture with a little white dog. I love a little white dog named Brutus. You know, I love my neighbors too, and that's how come I'm delivering this message. So if y'all ain't doing anything on December the 11th, on a Saturday, we'll be in Onetta Harris Park, named after my homeboy's mama. And we'll be giving away bicycles to the children of formerly incarcerated people, because I learned what Christmas meant by not having stuff. You know, so it meant that on the December the 26th, there was a number of years that I was stealing somebody else's bicycles. So I give away a whole bunch of them so somebody else won't have to steal them. You know, maybe they'll make it to Stanford and get the rest of it. So I'd like to thank all of the organizers. Not only invited you to come in, is because I respect your hard work that you put into this event. And I think you should have an opportunity to enjoy it and pick up the messages that everybody's given. So you shouldn't be able to work so hard, because what you reminded me of is my dad, who used to wait at tables at Stanford. He went to Stanford every day. Didn't mean he got a damn education out the deal. He got to wait on the tables. Well, anyway, I just came up here to say I love you. My granddaughter's there. She ain't never heard me speak. You know, so she get to hear me say this. All right.